Well, good morning, everybody. I hope we're having a wonderful day. Happy day before government mandated jet lag. Because, yeah, unless you're basically in Arizona, outside the areas that do use daylight saving time. Um, oops. Yeah, we're all going to have jet lag tonight because daylight saving time starts tonight. And while we enjoy that extra hour in the evening, yeah, it kills our sleep schedule. It's a lot of problems. I take Monday off because, yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of exhaustion. But, it is what it is, and all of that other exciting stuff. But, yeah, it's been a week with work. We're not discussing it. Morale is low. So, yeah, that's how great it is. If you saw my weekly vlog, you've heard some stuff about it. If you haven't seen the weekly vlog, yeah, it's bad. Go see it. But like I said, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it, so I'm not going to worry anything about it until something happens. In the chat, we have some wonderful people already. Good morning, Julie, who says, hey, Russ and David. It's a great day to sew with y'all. David's not here today, although I see he's in the chat. David is tomorrow when we are doing the first two blocks of Chatsworth, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have my friend Steven of The Idiot Quilter. Good morning, Steven. He was on early with our friend Sean, the guy who sews. And yeah, it's been a busy day for YouTubers today. Good morning, Cynthia. How you doing? And yes, good morning, David, who is saying hello from NOLA. Yeah, so what I am working on is one of the blocks for my mystery quilt for the East Cobb Quilt Show submission that I'm doing. People think that they know what I'm doing, but honestly, you may not. So, who knows? And this block is an FPP block that I am working on. I had to design it myself. It's a 10 and a half finished, I think, block. It's a weird size, so I don't know if there's any point in me releasing the PDF. I had to print it on legal paper in order for it to fit, which meant a whole lot of extra fun. And honestly, I only had to print it on legal paper because, like, there's one piece that's just too big. I could have potentially split this in half somewhere and said, hey, split it in half, whatevs. But then I would have had an extra seam, and I don't know if I want that extra seam. In fact, there is an extra seam that I am going to have, but I'm only doing it because it makes other things look a little better. So, yeah, I'm going to be working on that. Good morning, Crystal, who says happy Saturday with big explosions. So I am going to switch to here. My fabric choices are a grunge yellow and grunge onyx. I don't remember what shade of yellow this is. But it's going to be a fun block and very excited. I overcut all of my pieces. So if you look at here, A2, this piece right here, I know you can't read the A2, is being done with this ginormous piece of black. And it's mostly because, I cut a strip of black fabric and I was like, I can't do anything else with it, so I'm just going to overcut. So I did overcut. And hopefully we'll have some fun with these blocks. I've got 6 or 7 units to make. This one's the big one. This one's the top. And we will see how far I get with my units. And I'm just checking to see if all 3 are the same size. They are. And a cool trick that was suggested like a couple weeks ago was to pre-sew. Oops, sorry, did not mean to hit you. Basically put little holes on the lines to help you with the folding. So now that I have perforations, it's super easy for me to find where these folds are going to be. And we need the folds in order to get our seam allowances for the fabric, because we're there we go. So I just did a quick fold. You don't need to do a full fold. You just need to get enough of a crease so that you can see where you're going. And most foundation patterns will tell you which order to do these things in. So in this case, I let the software EQ8 give me the numbers. So it says A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm not going to do it in this order because I don't like the idea of coming this way and then the top and bottom. I'm going to start in the center because that just feels a little bit more natural to me. A true foundation paper pattern that you purchase will hopefully tell you that this is number 1. I could have reordered everything in EQ8, but again, this is just for me. So I am not concerned over the order. The first thing I do is I have Elmer's glue dots, which I have zero idea why I'm slightly out of focus, but it's Elmer's glue dots. I have not been able to find the glue dots in a hot minute. In fact, give me 1 second. I want to see if I can just do a quick wipe on the lens here. Maybe there's a smush that's happened. That's slightly better, but maybe not really. I haven't been able to find the dots in refill in a minute, but they do make a Elmer's tape runner, which is yellow, that works just as good. The dots are just a little, they're just mildly easier to pull off. Good morning, Judy. How you doing today? Good morning, Charlotte. And good morning, Candace, who first said, hey, use, then decided to change it to hey, Russ. So what I do with my glue dots or glue runner is I just put a little bit, and I'm overkilling this, and line my first piece up over it and use the glue dots to, I don't like it right there. I want it a little bit closer to there. And use the glue dots, glue tape, what have you, to hold it down. You could also use a pin if that's your choice. You could also use glue stick. They have all kinds of temporary gluing solutions. You don't want to use super glue. You don't want to use something like fray check or something like that, because that's going to permanently bond your fabric to the paper. You don't want that. You just want something that's a temporary bond. The dot runner does say it's permanent. It's not to fabric. And then what we do is we go to the next piece, we fold it back, and this is where our tools, the add a quarter ruler, is useful. And this is the add a quarter plus, and the difference between the add a quarter and the add a quarter plus is this side of the ruler. So it's got a lip side, and then it's got, I'm going to call it a measure folding side. The add a quarter, this is just like the same rulers that we had in like grade school and stuff. It's, or almost like your regular ruler. On the add a quarter, it's just got this full lip. On the add a quarter plus, it is a sharper edge. Let's see if that'll show up a little bit better. Hide my face. It's basically a sharper edge in it. So it helps you with the folding. If you didn't pre-fold, you have a sharper lip and everything to go against. But with your add a quarter, what you would do is you would take your paper, line your add a quarter up with the fold that you just did, and slice off this extra. So I'm going to do that over here. And what you have done is basically created your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you open it back up. And your first piece, I neglected to mention, you're always going to put face up, because we always are going to put everything right sides together. I'm going to grab my second piece, and this one's going face down. And we are lining them right sides together. And after we get them right sides together, we're going to flip it. We're doing this upside down and backwards at this point because we can't see what we are working with. But you could always fold your paper back and see if you're still lined up. And I kind of went awry because it happens when you show things off. But as soon as you have everything lined up, you put it underneath your machine. You're going to want to take about a 1/4 inch outside. I had to make sure again. And you're going to reduce your stitch length to about a 1.8. And I say 1.8 because that's enough to put enough holes in the paper to make it a little bit easier to rip out. But it's not too many holes that if you make a mistake, you can still rip it. And you are just going to sew on that line. And you're going to end about a 1/4 inch after. I like to do a back tack stitch just to keep everything in and cut my thread. And when you do that, you're then going to open up your seam and press it open. Again, this is way more fabric than I need. It's fine. I'm going to shift my other blocks over here so I can press this. And we have a piece. Now, this doesn't look very exciting yet, but it will look even better as we get there. Good morning, Tamara, who's asking, what is today's project? Today's project is one of the blocks for my East Cobb show. If you saw the thumbnail before coming into the video, you will see an artist rendition of it. Normally I put it right here, but I didn't realize that this wasn't the right image until the last second, and I didn't have time to get a copy of the image, download it again. So we're stuck with this mystery thing. It's my mystery project for the East Cobb Quilt Show. So I still feel like that image is good. I did trim a whole lot of fabric off, but like I said, with foundation paper piecing, you're going to cut bigger. I could have used an entire, fat quarter for this piece, and you're still going to get an accurate seam. So now that I have that piece, I'm going to grab my next one. And a lot of what I like to do, if you're cutting these outside of a pattern, so sometimes a pattern will tell you cut all of this extra fabric, or cut these size pieces for piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some just give it on your own. But if you fold your fabric back and you have enough to cover everything, that is really what you're trying to do. You really only need to do that when you are doing weird angles and stuff, just to make sure you're covering everything. My biggest times have been really weird angles where somebody said, cut this size rectangle. And then when I'm trying to piece it up there, I've had mistakes because, I was beginner. Still have mistakes as a, somewhat proficient. Good morning, Ingrid, who says, better to have extra fabric than too little. Always overcut. That is a true statement. One thing that I tell people, because we are working on the Solar Flare project, which is using Tula Pink basics, is when a pattern tells you what size to cut out, you are always better to, do what I call stack and whack, where you just roll it. If everything's the same size, you just put things on and you just do a quick cut. But make sure you go at least the size that they tell you. You don't have to be accurate in your sizes, which is why I'm good with stack and whack with those. But you have to at least be within the range of what they tell you. So if they tell you to cut 2.5, and if you cut it, just make it at 2 and 5/8, which is just slightly bigger, you're going to be fine. If you cut it at 2 and 3/8, you're probably fine, but you're pushing it just a little bit. Okay, so again, lay on the fabric and cut. These first few seams are very boring, but once they start coming together, things come in. Good morning, Raven. How are you today? Ingrid says, Solar Flare is so much fun. Nice big pieces and blocks so you can see progress quickly. Yes. That's one of my favorite things. Plus, they give you good cutting instructions. I'm using the word good loosely. Basically, there's a lot of pieces that are the same size, so it was very easy just to do, like I just said, stack and whack, where you take a bunch of fabrics, layer them together, and if they're not perfect, that's fine. If they are perfect, that's even better. Because like I said, with foundation paper piecing, you're trimming down at the end. So the fact that I have this giant piece does not matter, because I'm just going to come over here fold on the next line. Trim. Grab my next piece. And as you see, I've got a giant tail. I don't care because, again, we're going to trim all of this in the end. And this next step that I'm about to do will explain why I'm doing this locking stitch at the end. So I'm going to press this last piece open. So now that I have these done, as you see, it's starting to look a little like something. I want to fold back here, but if I do, it's trying to pull my stitches up. So what I do beforehand is I will pop these couple stitches out of the paper to the line. You don't need to go past the line, just pop them to the line. You got to be very careful not to go too far past the line, but then you can fold everything back and use your ruler to grab your 1/4 of an inch. And what I'm going to do beforehand is I'm going to trim these two sides just so that I have a little bit less, or no, I'm just going to leave it. What I can do is I can just put a dab of glue there and they will hold in place. I could have also ran a couple stitches over here just to have that little bit of extra help. But that just keeps your papers from flying around. And I have trimmed a perfect 1/4 of an inch. And I can do this top piece. And again, you need to go about a 1/4 of an inch off. This pattern and most patterns that have them have a dotted line at the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So as long as you go into your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, you'll be fine. And then I'm going to have to do the same thing on the opposite side here. I'm popping these stitches. Just to the next line. And normally I use newsprint paper to print on, but because this was a larger than 8.5 by 11 piece, I had to use regular printer paper. The lighter printer paper you can use, the better, because it's thinner. Good morning, Mary. How are you today? Says good morning, Russ and everyone. And again, I apologize that I'm cutting off camera, but I don't have a cutting cam. But again, to reiterate, I'm just putting my add a quarter up against the fold. It's got a lip, so it stays there pretty well. You could always put, if you're concerned, a postcard or something in here just to give it a little bit more support, but it stays there pretty well. And then I'm going to put the last piece on this unit. Mary says she's waiting for the temperature to get above freezing today. Well, I'm glad that it's warming up there. It has really warmed up here to the point where I probably shouldn't say what our temperatures were like yesterday and today, because that'll make some people jealous. We do have white things out here right now, and by white things I'm talking about the start of flowers on the trees. I noticed that yesterday as I was taking Riley to daycare. So my first unit is done. I'm going to hold it up here. As you see, it's the top of a smiley face, which is what the, what is that thing called? Thumbnail showed. And what you can do now is trim everything to the dotted lines. I'm probably going to hold off on that for a minute because I want to see how many of these pieces I can get done on the live. Because, you know, these are... the picture of this quilt is due in like a week. So I want to get as far done as possible. So I'm now looking at this piece, which is a significantly smaller piece. And I don't have my numbers done exactly. But let's see. This. 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's the order that I need to sew them. Again, let's start with the first piece and glue dots, glue tape, and first piece goes right sides up. And the other thing that you can do is look at it towards the light, and you want to make sure that you are covering at least 1/4 of an inch around all pieces. So if you kind of, I don't know if we can see through anything here, you can't. But when I look at this through the light, I can see the fabric outline behind it, and I can see that everything is covering at least 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to fold back and trim this piece off. And in this pattern, I know what pieces are what color. Which is why I know what's going on here. You'll have to always refer to your own patterns as to what pieces go where. Raven goes, ha ha, white things. It was 48 yesterday and snowing today. I'm sorry that it's still snowing. It's, March. It should not be snowing in March, in my opinion. Then again, when I lived in Massachusetts, sophomore year of college, I had a lab report due on April 1st. So I spent until like 3 a.m. working on that lab report and got it done. I went to bed at 5 a.m. A friend of mine called and said, "How much snow did you get?" I'm like, I have no idea. I've been working on a lab report. I'm exhausted. It's 5 freaking a.m. She said she would call back later. I think she called back at 7 with the same question. And I opened up the shades in my dorm room. And I said, I can't see outside, so I can't tell you how much we got. The short is we ended up getting, I think it was about 3 or 4 feet of snow that night. Classes were canceled, so all the work that I did on my lab report, useless. Okay, meant my procrastination, blah, 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 blah. But, yeah, we were snowed into our dorm rooms on April 1st. Okay, next piece is B3. Again, I'm trying to make sure everything is covered. This block probably could have been done using many traditional methods. But as I was doing the maths and realizing, oh, wait, these aren't exactly big pieces, I said, I'm doing this foundation paper piece. Which meant I had to add a whole bunch of extra, what are those things called? Lines to get the software to produce me foundation papers. And again, I'm cutting big pieces off, but I'm getting very accurate seams. So now I'm doing B4. Again, using a giant piece for a little bit. And I would say a lot of this waste that I'm making could have been used as part of the remaining pieces, but I said to heck with this. It was going to have waste anyway. Judy's asking, am I going to the Sewing Expo next weekend? My current plan is no. Mostly because if I went, I would want to go very first thing. And I've already spent way too much money this month. There's not really anything there that I want to look at when it comes vendor-wise. There are a few vendors there that were at QuiltCon that I was like, maybe. And then I said, no, I'm going to go with something different. Specifically, there was this ironing board company. Because the ironing board, I keep saying ironing board that I have is, it was a Target special from probably 25 years ago. And I haven't done a lot of upkeep on the pad and cover. So sometime in the last year, I just grazed my finger over it and put a hole in it. So I'm like, I think it's time for a new one. And I've been kind of in the market looking for something a lot wider, because a lot of the stuff that, I mean, an ironing board was traditionally made for clothing for the most part. And then, you know, we're trying to trap it up for ironing of bigger pieces. So I wanted something wider and everything. And there was this ironing board company that looked like it was pretty good, but I also found something on Amazon for about a quarter of the price that doesn't have all the bells and features, but I don't think I need all the bells and features. So yeah, that's just a long way of saying I'm probably not going. If, you know, somebody convinces me to go on Saturday, I might be convinced, but maybe not. If you look right now, we've got some funky looking pieces, and I need a straight edge. So that's why foundation paper piecing probably gets a lot of people confused, because they're like, how is this going to become a straight edge? And it's because you use your ruler. So I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing, is popping a few stitches until I get back to the line, so I could fold back. And I'm just going to trim everything off at my 1/4 of an inch. And look, we have our straight line. And I know I have been talking a lot about this ruler. It's a really great ruler if you do a lot of foundation paper piecing. But if you are just starting out and thinking about it and like uncertain if it's something that you want to do, by all means, you can use your regular ruler. You can, and I'll show you in a second how you would do that. And again, I have a funky shaped piece, but it is perfect because once I cut all of these 1/4 inch pieces off, or these allowances, it's going to be a perfect square, and then I can sew them to other pieces. Let's see, I'll do this one next, because this one I can show a little bit easier what I'm talking about. So again, this is one of them. The numbers that they're doing, not exactly thrilled with, but it is what it is. In fact, I'm probably going to use the numbers that they're doing just because I think it'll be easier. Candace says she's going to convince me we can carpool. Okay. We just got to figure out what I'm going to do instead of a live. Judy's like, do it. What did I find on Amazon? I don't remember the brand. Honestly, it's one of those, they dropped a thing on a keyboard and everything's all caps. No, wait, this one is not. This one's like a Bartelli or Bartonelli, or it begins with a B, ends with an I. And yeah, it's a simple name like that. So what you can always do if you do not have the fancy smancy add a quarter ruler is when you fold it over, you can line your regular ruler up with a 1/4 inch line and do the same slicing. There's nothing exciting about the add a quarter ruler for anybody who is uncertain if they want to do it. The only thing that I think makes this really useful is it's got this sharper point to help you fold back. But it's, as I said, it's not 100% necessary. Most of these quilting gadgets that we have, not fully necessary. But Judy, if you want to know my ironing board, send me an email and I will send you the link to the one that I just bought if you're interested. I haven't unboxed it yet, so I can't tell you if it's really good, but what I can tell you is it's bigger than the Target Special, and something that is going to be a lot easier for me to do bigger pieces on. And yes, I do know that I'm putting 2 yellows together in here. I've decided to do it this way. And I think I'm doing it this way because it makes it look a little bit better in the output than if I did not put the extra line in here. And then I'm going to do this last one real quick. I honestly was hoping that I would have the entire block done in my live, but I don't see that happening at this point because I've still got 3 more units to do. And I don't particularly want to run over on my live because I've got other stuff I need to finish today. And I have an appointment at 2 o'clock that I got to make sure I get to. So I'm not going to go too much over my normal live time. Cynthia says when she paper pieces, she uses the 1/4 inch ruler. Yeah, like I said, the add a quarter is wonderful if you're doing a lot of paper piecing. If you're just going to try it out for the first time, don't buy it. Unless you're doing a large project that would, like, it would make it a lot easier, because the add a quarter makes things easier only in the fact that if you're doing a whole lot of seams, you've got that lip that you can press against. If you don't have that lip to press against, it makes it much harder. Now, this one, David was like, why are you doing this? So if you look very carefully, I got some itty bitty little pieces. I don't know what I was thinking when I decided the itty bitty little pieces, but I am still going to do it. And we are going to see how well this works, because this portion okay, the entire pattern's untested. But this portion is very much there be dragons here, because I've not done anything this tiny before. So put my little bit of glue down. And then I know that this little tiny piece isn't even a full 1/4 inch seam, but you still need to cut your lineup pieces. And I'm going to take this piece and this is my true, I'm praying that this works how I hope it's going to work. Because again, I've never done a piece this small. I think this is a 1/4 inch. If it's not a 1/4 inch, it's smaller than a 1/4 inch. Let me take my ruler. The actual, yeah, it's a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by whatever, like it's like 3/8 of an inch, whatever the hypotenuse of a right triangle is. And then I get to do the same thing on this side. These are just like the little lips of the smiley face. And then lay this down, right sides together. And this is one where you definitely want something that is significantly bigger than you need, because it's harder to line up exactly where it's going to be. And then I have to pop these seams so I can fold it back to here. And I think this one I'm going to trim just so we can see how small these pieces are. Colleen says, just dropping in. Hello, everyone. Hello, Colleen. How you doing? I think the amusing thing is my friend Ingrid is probably thinking, oh, Russ, these are huge pieces that you're making. Because she does like micro FPP. So this doesn't look like much of anything. But when I come over here, grab this ruler to trim. And this is where you need to be accurate with your cutting. Because you're at this point cutting the pieces that go next to each other. And trim. Eager goes, gigantic, I know. One day I might take enough of something to be able to do the tiny pieces. So that's what it looks like. Oops. Right now. And then again, I'm going to have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance pulled off of this. So these are going to be itty bitty teeny weeny little polka dot bikinis. Little tiny pieces that will be sewn together. Let me do the other really tiny one. In fact, if I can get through this fairly quickly, I might be we'll see how long I want to go over. Let's do a quick poll. Do we want me to go over by like 15 minutes? We'll see what the folks say. Because I think that's what it's going to take for me is an extra 15 minutes to get this block and the last block done, and then get all of them trimmed, and then I can start sewing them together. So if you think I should go on for about another 15 minutes or so, let me know in the chat. Tamara says, yes, please. I don't think it's going to take a lot of effort to get me to keep going. Colleen says, sure, keep going. Mary says, sure. Candace says, do it. Colleen or Candace probably didn't say it in that, very evil tone, but okay. Sounds like we've got a consensus that Russ is going to go slightly over his normal time. I try to be respectful of everybody else who streams on Saturdays. And I know everybody likes to give everybody some YouTube love. But I'm sure we all really want to know what this block is going to look like. Especially me. Karen says, definitely more Russ. Charlotte says, take a deep breath and go for it. Okay. And then I'm going to go on this side, pop some stitches. If you don't do that back tack at the end, not back tack, I don't do a back tack, I do a stay stitch, but you can do a back tack. It makes popping those stitches slightly harder. Just slightly. I forgot to press. I was getting ahead of myself. Okay. Now that I'm back to where I should be, I'm going to put this piece on here, which, like I said, everything is way oversized. And again, with foundation paper piecing, I don't care that they're way oversized. And the biggest fear that people have with foundation paper piecing is, I think, the fact that you can't see your fabric. I think that's the part that trips people up the most, because everything else is very adjacent to what you do with normal quilt projects. You have a 1/4 inch seam, which you're making after the fact, not before the fact. And your fabrics are right sides together, and you are lining your fabric up to your 1/4 inch seam. So there's no real reasons to be afraid of foundation paper piecing. And as they were talking about on Sean's channel this morning, Fat Quarter Shops, it's So Emma. They have a whole bunch of foundation papers that are traditional quilt blocks. So they have like the log cabin, the snail's trail, pineapple blocks and stuff like that. And the cutting instructions that they give you are essentially oversized traditional blocks, for lack of a better phrase. And when you put them together, you're making a traditional block. So your mind is thinking traditional block, but you're using a foundation paper piecing method. So it helps get your mind in the correct, or in the different logics for foundation paper piecing. So I think those are great to start with. One. And I'm going to do you. And let me put you upside right so I don't goof you. This is my last unit to sew. And then I can trim them all up and we can see how they will come together. And I'm folding back to here. I think the other thing that trips people up is the fact that there's weird shapes after you've sewn a seam. And weird shapes get a little confusing. I would not recommend directional prints for FPP because you'll be able to see that you had to do directional changes and stuff like that. I also would not recommend, a lot of times, prints for the most part, because you will lose, in many cases, the idea of what it is. Batiks in solids are very, very beginner friendly for FPP, because they don't have a right side, and a pretty side, out-facing side, whatever direction you want to call it. They do, but it's not as noticeable if you do the wrong direction. When it comes to prints, like Grunge that I'm using is a print. It's mildly directional, but not enough that, especially with this pattern, is going to bother me. But definitely you probably want to do something closer to a solid when you have weird directional angles. If you're going to use the It's So Emma patterns, you can use even directionals with those a lot easier, because they're traditional blocks. They're easy to they're easier to fall apart with, not fall apart, to put together with that way. If you remember, last year we were working on the dragon fruit project. Those were traditional blocks made using FPP with the It's So Emma patterns and Tula Pink fabric. And we did have a couple Tula Pink fabrics that were directional in our kits. So we did make them work. I'm getting near the end of my spool, so it gets caught sometimes. So that's why I became unthreaded. Okay. Take two. As I just realized I didn't back tack back here, so it's going to be slightly more difficult for me to pop that stitch. But only slightly. And this one has no stitches to pop. Another very helpful tool or thing to do is to lay out your pieces in the order that you're going to sew them, just to keep you from sewing them in the wrong pieces, because pieces start to look alike. Good afternoon, Molly, who says, what am I working on this morning? I am almost done with all of the units for one of the blocks in my East Cobb Quilt Show project that I'm working on. It is a smiley face, which, if you remember from the thumbnail that you saw before you came in, that's what it's going to look like, except grunge instead of the fabrics that was picked there. So if you feel like you need to rewind for a little bit of a FPP tutorial, and I say a little bit because I didn't go through every little step. I did a decent tutorial, but you know, every time that I go through the steps, I'm like, I don't think I've said this before. But again, we're always making our straight lines. And that's the direction I want to sew it. And Molly, you're lucky because we're going a couple minutes over, just because we all want to see what this block is going to look like when it's done. Because even I don't know. So I'm going to grab all the pieces. And I'm still missing one piece. We'll see if I get that added on at the end. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to trim them all on the outside dotted line, because that's what this pattern says is the outside. And I will have trimmed pieces. So I've got two. In fact, I'm going to trim these in smaller units. I'm going to take these three and do them first, so I can see a little, so we can see the little bit of progress. And I'm just being a little OCD when it comes to my trimming, because as you know, in regular patchwork, a thread or two matters, but in foundation paper piecing, a thread or two definitely matters with your points. Molly says, always coming in late. It's 11 there in Texas. This way. This is also me trying to remember what is the order that these blocks go in. which is something a properly written foundation paper piecing pattern will do for you. This is not a properly written foundation paper piecing pattern. Okay, so I have these three pieces that I'm going to put together first. As you see, it kind of looks like a smiley. And the choices that I have are I can switch to my 1/4 inch foot, which I think I will do. This way I will have two different things to line up against. And because I'm using my 1/4 inch foot, I'll do a leader. But I have everything lined up, the edges lined up, paper, and the way that I was taught is what we need to do is do a couple basting stitches in the beginning, in the middle, and the end, like 2 or 3 basting stitches. That way, if you have to rip them out, it's easy. I don't care enough in this project. I mean, I do, but I'm just going to wing it and just use my stitching and line up on one side and do my sew and pray, stitch and pray, whatever the method that we all like to use, especially when we're doing flying geese and stuff where you're hoping that everything's going to line up. And you can't really see this, but I'm off by a couple stitches, or not a couple. I'm off by like fractions of a millimeter, and I don't care. It's close enough. And I'm just going to press it to one side. Now is also the good time to start removing paper from the center area, because this is going to be another seam at some point. So I'm just going to remove where the seam is going to be. I'm not going to remove, well, this is going to remove all the papers in the seam. But you don't really need to remove everything at this point. You just need to remove where the seam is. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Line up. And I'm just going to stitch and pray. If it is off by a large amount, I will rip it. But if it is close enough for government work, then it's going to stay. And the front side is good. The back side, again, I'm off by, that's about 2 stitch widths, but it's close enough. If anybody is measuring, if I'm off by a stitch or two, they going to be put on my list. So I'm just going to press everything open. Again, remove these papers that are in the center. All the papers are going to be removed at some point, but you still need these outside papers for stability right now. But you want to remove anything that's going to impact your seams as you are putting your seams together. So I'll press these. And a lot of times your pattern is going to tell you which direction to press your big seams. When you are doing your units, you've only got one way to press. But when you are doing your sewing your units together, you have multiple ways to press. This has got a really long tail, so I'm just going to tack it down at the other end, like I said, just to give it stability. You can use your glue. Again, I could also just do a couple stitches over here, something to keep it stable while I trim. In fact, the glue's not sticking, so I am going to do the stitching suggestion that I made. And I'm going to put this in between the line and the seam allowance. And I'm just going to put a couple stitches. And that's just going to hold it in place while I do my trimming. In fact, I'm going to do another one right about here. And right about here. Again, this is just stability. These are inside the seam allowance, so that as I'm cutting things, everything's going to stay in place. And we can file it under, nobody's going to see it. So I've got these two units. I cut on the wrong line. You're on the right line, okay. My software adds an additional line on the side. But that also means that my stabilizing stitch was put in the wrong spot, but that doesn't matter anymore. So to line things up, that's how they're going to go. Stitch and pray. Open it up, or before I open it up, that one looks downright perfect. I want the stitches to go this way, or the seam to go this way. Remove the bulk papers And we'll press this one up. And if everything is done correctly, my two ends, which are here and here, should line up perfectly. And now we're going to do the same thing. Line everything up. I'm going to use clips this time because this is a larger seam. But I'm going to start with two ends. And then I thought that those were lined up, but apparently they're not. This is me not remembering what I drew. Now, this is a lot better than them lining up because I don't have bulk. But basically, I'll show you when I'm done, but I'm accidentally, on purpose, I lined up my seams to be a 1/4 of an inch away from each other, so there's no bulk. Yeah, it was accidentally on purpose. There's also the question of how bad is paper piecing on your needle. It just really depends on the thickness of the paper. I am definitely changing my needle after this. This is a older needle, so it was at the end of its life anyway. But, you know, I got a good extra little bit out of it. Good afternoon, Colleen, who says hi, bestie? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And yes, Ingrid is here too, bestie. So I'm going to push everything down in this one just because that's where the lower bulk is going to be. I've got the weird little... Oh, those are so cute! I'm going to have to show you this in a second. Let me get this pressed. This is something you could not do with traditional piecing. Look at those little rounded corners. Oh, those are so cute. I'm going to rip the bulk areas out real quick. Well, just not the bulk areas, just the outside pieces. Not that I think I really needed to yet, but it's habit just to grab the outsides. I mean, ideally, I'm going to remove the entire inside paper at this point, but I want to get this done in the next couple minutes. I'm going to press this down again. And then the last big piece. Really, there's two. This one. So for this one, I only trimmed one side. I didn't trim the other. This is the outside. So I will be able to put this here and here. Landa says, looks like a smiley face, or you don't need the or. It is a smiley face. The only reason why I know is because that's what I put on the image on the front or on the live. I wasn't hiding what this block was going to become. And I am choosing to do the bulkier side up as I sew this piece. And there is one more piece that needs to go onto here. And that's going to be for the bottom. Let's see, I'm going to press these up. So it's starting to look like the smiley face. I have just an extra piece of fabric. Ooh, piece of fabric. That I'm just going to line up on here. And I'm just going to sew, I call it a 1/4 inch seam because it's going to be a 1/4 inch seam. But I'm going to sew into here, and I'm just going to use the 1/4 inch seam line from the foundation paper. I apparently have notifications going off the yin yang. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do all the trimming. I'm just going to do a quick press. I am going to cut this wonkiness off over here. And if I come over here, we have a smiley face. Well, mostly. What I am going to have to do is I'm going to have to trim up the top side to the line, and then the way the foundation pattern printed out was just one piece here, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I need to trim it to size, essentially, and then I'm going to snowball. I keep putting this down. I'm going to put it, and then I'm going to snowball each corner to give it a more rounded face. So on the thumbnail, you saw a square smiley face because that's the way that the foundation pattern is easy. I'm now going to have to actually do real math and figure out the sizes that I'm going to need to do to get a good triangle or good snowball effect on here after I've trimmed it up. I think the order I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the top, remove the papers, trim it to size on the bottom, and then snowball. And then I'll have a completed block, which I should hopefully be able to show you guys in my vlog this week. It's going to be pretty cool, kind of excited. Like I said, this is part of my quilt that I'm going to be doing for the East Cobb Quilt Show. People have thought that they knew what I was going to do, and they can continue to think either yes or no. Like I said, I think the best part that I have in here is those itty bitty teeny weeny little snowballs right here that kind of round out the smiley face. I think that those are really, really adorbs. So I have, like I said, this block to finish up cutting, and I still have essentially, I'm going to count it as 2 blocks to finish. I have 2 that I need to sew the rows together in the block, and then 1 I have to sew completely from scratch. Those shouldn't take too long, and then I can get it put together. And I've decided on the pattern for the long arm, decided on the thread for the long arm. I need backing, which means I need to make a run to the quilt shop on my way back from my appointment that I have to be out of here for shortly. So it's been a pleasure sewing with y'all. I'm sorry that I'm running a half an hour late, but you know, I did do a poll and everybody's like, finish. So we finished this block, and I think that it's going to be a really, really fun block in my quilt for the East Cobb Show. I don't know when I'm deciding that I'm going to show you guys the finished quilt. My guess is at the East Cobb Quilt Show, which is in June, but we will see what happens. Tomorrow here on my channel, at 1 p.m. Eastern, my friend David and I and another surprise guest are going to be working on blocks 1 and 2 of Chatsworth. This is it was traditionally made a block of the month, as it says here on the bottom, block of the month. It's a really fun pattern. It was David's idea to do this, so we are kind of excited to be able to do it. So we are going through the stuff, but we're doing it 2 blocks every other week. So it's kind of a block of the week. A lot of times blocks of the months get to run a little long when you have a lot of blocks, especially since if you're doing multiple of the same blocks, like we're doing with Secret Garden. With Chatsworth, they're very simple blocks and they're smaller blocks. So we figured we should be able to put 2 blocks together every week or every other week. We thought about doing it every week, but we didn't have enough time. So we're doing every other week, except for the weeks that I have to take off for Massachusetts. But that's for future everybody to worry about. On Thursday, I'll be releasing my weekly vlog. And then next Saturday, if Candace hasn't, convinced me to join her at the Sewing Expo, on the other side of the city. I'll be sewing something here live. If not, I'll probably skip the live next week. It just depends on how well Candace can convince me and what kind of craziness happens this week, because Monday I'm getting an estimate on getting some trees removed, and we'll see how expensive that's going to be. So give everybody in the YouTube universe lots of love, and can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. Toodles!